He's got one foot in the frying pan and one in the pressure cooker. Believe me, as a bowler, I know that right about now, your bladder feels like an overstuffed vacuum cleaner bag, and your butt is kind of like an about to explode bratwurst.
Hey, do you mind? I wasn't talking when you were bowling.
Was I talking out loud?
Welcome to Munson's at the Movies. My name is Kyle. I will once again be your host, joined by the rest of the Munsons, and I want to give them a wide berth.
He's what is called a born loser. A real Munson.
And talk a little bit about what's going on in their worlds. We will be without Warren this episode. We're not sure if he's just in the transfer portal somewhere, but we're pretty sure it's because he started a new job and his life is chaos right now. So we're going to do our best without him. But we got the rest of the crew here, starting with Rigby.
Yeah, happy to finally be joining at the beginning of the episode this time around. Happy to talk about a little Elliot Page tonight. So should be an interesting episode. Looking forward to it.
We're so glad that you've decided to stop being a little bit Hollywood for us this time, Rigby.
It was really hard, but
nice.
I made the ultimate sacrifice to make it on time today.
James.
Pumped to be here. I'm currently recording this from my childhood home, so if there's a lack of personal space, I will mute myself because my family is slowly coming in and out of the office. Like, it doesn't matter.
Dude, didn't your mom and dad, weren't they like recommending you do a podcast?
Oh, yeah, that was last Thanksgiving. That was a big moment for them. They were like, you know what, I think, you should do a podcast. I was like, well, funny story, Mom. I've been doing one for about a year. But let me subscribe you to it real quick.
It would have been priceless and adorable if you'd have told us that your update was you had to tell them they couldn't watch you record tonight.
that wouldn't stop them. I guarantee they will make an appearance here where I have to mute myself or we have to edit it out at some point.
Case.
Well, I was so inspired by the movie I'm reviewing tonight that I went ahead and watched another popular remake from a 90s horror movie, Candyman. A little bit of a teaser. One of these movies I loved. The other one, let's just say I didn't. And you will have to listen for my review to get the hot take there. But other than that, man, not much on my end. Just decided to talk a little Elliot Page tonight.
If you're intrigued by Case's little teaser there, just keep in mind he's reviewing the movie Flatliners. And that's all you really need to know to see through his ruse. I am excited because there was a dark moment in the world of the internet for a few days. And that's when OnlyFans announced that they would no longer be allowing graphic nudity on their platform. And I felt this moment of significant empathy for James, because I know that's his livelihood right now. And James, you have to tell me, what were your thoughts when they announced finally that they're going to reallow that on their platform?
I thought I was going to have to apply for a real job again. And, how am I supposed to pay this mortgage without, selling feet pics online? But it was good to see that they came to their better judgment and they realized the amount of money they would lose would be catastrophic business models. So they reversed course on that very quickly.
While I'm reckless in how I shame people, I'm not reckless, and we're not reckless in who we invite to the podcast to be our guest. And because we've got Lauren Hopkins back with us for a second time to join us on the Munsons at the Movies.
Woo! Welcome back.
Thank you.
Lauren is a higher education professional, and she lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She has worked from home since before COVID made it cool to do it, but also loved to travel often before COVID made that not cool. Since the last time we had her, Lauren has spent the summer learning to make seltzer. Interesting. It seems like the thing these days. And teaching a 100-pound dog how to swim. When she's not doing all of these things, Lauren works as a background actor and has worked on over a dozen films and TV shows. Like I mentioned, she was here with us for the Maya Rudolph episode. Welcome back, Lauren.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
In between the last time we had you, have you done any background acting?
I have. I actually was in Atlanta in May to work on a movie that I had worked on pre-COVID in Syracuse, New York. And then they were supposed to pick back up filming a few months later. And then we all know how Let's Just Stay Home for 2 weeks went. And so then they had production stopped for quite a while and then moved production locations. And so I was in Atlanta in May to work on a movie.
Very cool.
Are you allowed to reveal the identity of this movie, or is it secret?
Yeah, it's a movie called Gabriel's Rapture, and it's actually a sequel to a movie I'd worked on before.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're glad to have you back. We're down one Munson, so it's always nice when we've got a good guest to come in and help us pick up slack and put together a good episode. So let's do this. All right, birthdays. Because Warren's not here, someone needed to pick up the slack, and Lauren has graciously agreed to lead us in the birthday route. So let's see what she's got for us for September 9th.
Awesome. So we've a lot of birthdays for September 9th, so I tried to just pick some good ones. The first one we have today is Adam Sandler.
The
Sandman.
Oh, same time.
That's a good one.
52.
Oh, I was going to say 52. How about 51?
What?
49.
He gave himself quite the window there, Wrigley.
Yeah, went the wrong way.
I'm going to give myself a decent chance of winning, so I'll go a little bit higher. I'll go 54.
Kyle, you hit it right on the nose. He is 54.
Nice. Good job, Kyle.
Bullshit.
Bullshit, says Case.
I loved 100% Fresh, so I forgot how good Adam Sandler was at writing like musical jokes, and 100% Fresh absolutely killed me.
He's great.
Cannot endorse that special enough. It is damn good.
All right, well, next up we have Hugh Grant.
Man, I don't know.
I'm going to go 55 for Hugh.
Nah, I think older.
Yeah, I do too.
I think he's just got such a beautiful head of hair. You think he's younger, but I think he's older.
Give me 59.
62.
Give me 68.
What?
I'm going old.
Oh,
Old man.
damn.
Ooh. All right. Well, if we're playing Price is Right rules, Kyle wins again. He is 60 today.
Damn.
Oh, he's cheating. That's why. Google machine over here.
Going for that clean sweep. Let's go.
That's a good looking 60-year-old.
Yeah.
Give Kyle a minute to Google Michelle Williams' age.
Yeah, for real.
Yes, absolutely.
38.
Oh, I was going to say 38.
Too late.
Son of a B. I'll go 40.
All right, I'm going to try to snake this thing with Price is Right rules. 31.
Smart.
Oh. Well, Kyle makes the clean sweep. She is 40 today.
Come on.
Let's go. All legit. No cheating whatsoever. 5 actors tossed onto the wheel per our usual approach. And those 5 actors were Neil McDonough, Jesse Eisenberg, Billy Connolly, Giancarlo Esposito, and none of them really matter because the wheel landed on Elliot Page. Elliot, or as some movie and TV fans might know him as Ellen, which we'll get into a little bit previously, has 52 credits on his roster, so pretty manageable for someone who's been around acting since late 90s. And most of his work has been in the film world. So some TV, some shorts, but mostly film, and we like that. We enjoy that. So let's do how we normally do. Let's dig in with a little trivia from James, and this man's craft is only getting better by the week, and I don't think we're worthy.
Well, I really appreciate the hype there. What I will say is, despite being in the acting game since he was really young, very private person. And again, you wouldn't think that with how outspoken he is about his transition and gay rights. Still not a lot of information out there about his actual personal life other than the major things everyone knows. So this took a lot of digging, but I hope that I can trick some of you. I think I can pull this off. Lauren, I don't know if you remember this, but what I do here is 2 truths and a lie. I'm going to read 3 facts. 2 of them are going to be true about Elliot Page, and 1 is actually going to be about one of the many cast members of the Fast and the Furious franchise. Now, you would think, how can any of these facts sound even remotely similar when comparing Elliot Page to, say, Vin Diesel or Paul Walker or The Rock? Well, that's where the magic comes in. So I hope I can fool some of you guys. Fact number 1, he has a tattoo of Kristen Wiig's name on his bicep. Fact number 2, was once named PETA's Sexiest Vegan of the Year. Fact number 3, has over 92,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, despite only having produced and released 2 songs total.
Great job, James.
Yeah, dude. And you did some mental warfare beginning with trying to screw us up by saying names.
It's SAT prep.
Yeah.
I feel like the Kristen Wiig tattoo is the lie. I just don't know who from the Fast and Furious franchise that would be. So I'll say Charlize Theron just for the hell of it.
Yeah, I think I mentioned on the last podcast that I'm not sure I've ever seen a Fast and Furious film in its entirety. That hasn't changed since last time.
It's about family. All right.
So-
Not sure I'm disappointed. I don't know if I should be disappointed or proud of you. I've got nothing.
James, for the first time in over a year, I'm actually taking a legitimate shot at answering this with honesty and accuracy.
Oh.
Love it.
And I'm going to say it's fact 3, and that has got to be Vin Diesel.
I appreciate you, putting your money where your mouth is on that.
I'm going to go with fact 3 as well. I don't think he has Spotify listeners.
I've done my research on this.
Oh, no.
I feel pretty comfortable on this one. The legit part of my answer is that I know fact 2 is wrong because James is playing with some word salad on us here. He knows that I know what was in the show notes. So I know fact 2 is wrong. Who it was, though, I think Ronda Rousey's a really sexy vegan. And that's where this comes from. Who played Kara in Furious 7.
So I don't know where in the show notes that I should have seen that. But I apologize in advance if I did get this wrong. I don't think I did, though. But I'll start this way. So fact number 1 has a tattoo of Kristen Wiig's name on his arm. That's true. Elliot only has 3 tattoos. One of them is a name of a family member. One of them is a tattoo in relation to E.T., but instead it's his initials and his ex-wife's initials, and it says EP, phone home. And then one of them is legitimately Kristen Wiig's name. Revealed that on Conan O'Brien's talk show. I'm talking about tattoos. Got the tattoo to show his love for his friend. They both starred together in a movie we're going to cover called Whip It. And they became good friends. And just out of nowhere, it's like, yeah, I just got one. Big fan. We became good friends. Thought it was kind of like a sign. Random tattoo to get, but hilarious nonetheless. Fact number 2 is true. It was once named PETA's Sexiest Vegan of the Year. That was 2014, by the way. Past winners include the always odd but definitely attractive Jared Leto, Kristen Bell, formerly mentioned Kristen Wiig, Natalie Portman, Spider-Man himself, Tobey Maguire, and officially the second Munson to receive the honor, the first being Jessica Chastain.
Ooh.
And fact number 3, in case you nailed it, it's absolutely a fact about Vin Diesel, who has 92,000 Spotify listeners despite only having 2 songs.
Yes.
However, Elliot Page officially released 3 songs, one more than you, Vin, so step your game up if you're listening, 3 days ago.
Oh, shit.
At the time of this recording,
What?
anyway. Yeah, and already has 16,000 monthly listeners. The EP cover art is his dog, and the music is kind of what you would expect it to be. I listened to the 3 songs based on the indie kind of movies that we've seen Elliot do, and Elliot described it as lo-fi bedroom pop adventure. So you kind of get the gist of where it's going. Easy listening, but yeah, already has 16,000 monthly listeners despite just putting those 3 songs out 3 days ago.
I was not expecting that plot twist.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Well, congrats, Case, for getting it right. Normally, it's only guests who get it right. We never get it right.
And normally I piss away any guess I have just trying to make a joke.
See, James, the reason I thought you were messing with me on 2 is because I had read that fact about 2014 alongside Jared Leto, but I had only read vegetarian, not vegan. So I thought you were just changing the word. And then I was like, who else would have been like, I don't know what PETA gives out. So I don't know if there's a vegan and a vegetarian word, right? I don't know any of that shit.
You would think that there would be more vegans in the Fast and Furious franchise, but when I typed in the word vegan and Fast and Furious, the only thing that popped up was like, Michelle Rodriguez is thinking about it like 4 years ago. I was like, wow, no one really cares. Got it. All right, cool.
Yep, no time for that. Good work, as always.
That was great, man. That was great.
All right, snapshot and box office history. Case, what do we got?
Last week, we had a situation where an actor was actually held back a little bit on the metrics that I use. And really, I just tried to develop some metrics so we could start comparing some of these actors on a more of an even playing field. This week is the exact opposite. So if you remember last week, Chris Hemsworth had massive box office success, but it was kind of washed out a little bit because of the massive budgets of the movies that he was in. And this week, Elliot Page is the exact opposite. Being in smaller budgeted films that have done well in the box office, he has actually performed significantly better than I had anticipated. And really where the strength of Elliot's box office numbers come in is the return on investment on the budgeted films. He's got 3 really strong return on investments. The first one is Inception, which was budgeted for $160 million, and it world grossed $837 million, which is 5 times its budget. Lauren, as you know, any filmmaker in the industry, if they can make 5 times their budget, they're going to be in pretty good mood. Hard Candy, which we'll talk about shortly, had a budget of $950,000, and it world grossed $7 million, which is nearly 7.5 times its budget. So again, pretty impressive. But the most impressive movie that we have on our box office numbers in this category is hands down Juno, which had a $7.5 million budget, and it world grossed $232 million. This movie returned more than 30 times its budget, which is
Crazy.
unbelievable.
That's an indie production dream.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. Thing that's nice about it is he's got a pretty big role in all those movies. In Juno, I mean, it's hard to argue that he's a major portion of that success. On the low end of the spectrum, Page has a pretty impressive bombaroo, so I don't want you guys to think he's just a cash machine. Turnaround box office numbers. Tracy Fragments, which Page played the title role of Tracy, had a budget of $586,000 and ended up grossing a whopping $42,000. This movie lost $540,000 out of $586,000 budget. I do have one other note as it relates to the box office, but it is actually about the movie I'm covering later on this episode, so I will save it for that part of the review. But overall, box office, Page does a really, really good job of establishing a really nice spot in our list compared to other actors.
Where's he at?
He finishes, you guys, this is going to floor you guys, number 8.
I'm actually not that shocked by that based on all the movies that you've mentioned, because those are all like mega hits.
Mega. Star Meter, number 5. Critic ranking, 20. Fan ranking, 24. Number 6 and number 1 in 2 different box office metrics. And that puts him at 8. Pretty impressive.
Really is.
That Star Meter shocked me. That's higher than I thought.
He's got a lot of heat right now.
Yeah, that star meter, it says something about relevance pop culture wise, which we'll get into as we dig in. Thanks, Case.
You bet.
Well, before we get into first feature film, let's talk a little bit about the early days for Elliot Page. So Elliot fell in love with acting when he saw Phantom of the Opera in Toronto back in the day. Went to school at the Shambhala School, which was based with some Buddhist principles, which is really interesting when it comes to like your early days and growing up. But like James said, it's really hard to find a lot about Elliot. You would think he's been in the limelight quite a bit the past few years for a lot of personal revelations, and there's just not much, not even on his Wikipedia page. So you kind of have to dig really deep to find those things. But Canadian through and through, and because of that, a lot of his earliest work on the screen was doing Canadian films and television shows. So, for example, his first ever role was in a movie called Pit Pony, played a small character named Maggie, and also played the recurring role in that same show, Pit Pony, between 1999 and 2000. What was interesting, I did watch Pit Pony, and the connection I noticed is because in 2001, 2002, Elliot played Trina Leahy in 5 episodes of The Trailer Park Boys, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, and I think I'm going to start rewatching it here pretty soon. And, you know, it's 5 different episodes. She plays Leahy's daughter and is interacting with a lot of the main characters very early in the show. I noticed John Dunsworth, who plays Jim Leahy in Trailer Park Boys, in Pit Pony. So I was starting to see the connections in the Canadian film scene at that moment in time. I was like, that's probably why she got the job on Trailer Park Boys, because she worked with John on Pit Pony. 2002, he's in Marion Bridge, plays a character named Joni. I read that this is where Elliot fell in love with acting, doing this particular role. You know, very young, and, you know, like most young actors would do, did a Disney film. I downloaded a Ghost, played Stella. Played a little bit of a jokester character in that one, a Disney TV movie that you can find at least clips of on YouTube. And 2003, played young Lisa in Homeless to Harvard, the Liz Murray story, another TV movie. So a lot of, you know, nothing huge by this point, but a lot of smaller projects.
But fairly large if you're, you know, a 5th grader.
Yeah, right. When you're 9th grade, this is not the normal 9th grade life. No, right?
You're already very much comfortable in front of the camera, and you don't even have your driver's license yet.
And then at 16, joined the Vaughan Road Academy, Toronto. So taking some other steps for his acting career. Then the last one I'll mention for our first feature film is Mouth to Mouth, a movie that is available on YouTube, plays a little bit of a goth runaway that joins this cult-like group that is trying to help people get sober. And I just noticed August Deal was in that movie, who you've seen in some Tarantino films and Terrence Malick films. So that was a fun connection to see. But all that is going to get us to his first big, meaty role in Hard Candy in 2005. And Lauren, as our guest Munson, generally takes my review. And in this case, I would have done first feature film. And so Lauren has a pretty heavy one to talk through here.
Yeah, I would say pretty heavy is an understatement.
It's like a romantic comedy, if you will.
Coming of age tale.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard Candy came out in 2005, premiered at Sundance. And as Craig mentioned earlier, it had a budget of just under $1 million, but actually ultimately made around $7 million. So big return on what they spent versus what they made. He actually did win an award for this. He won Best Actress at the 2006 Austin Film Critics Association Awards. Just something to note there. In this, Elliot Page plays a teenage girl named Haley who meets this 30-something photographer in an online chat room, meets up with him in real life, and then convinces him to take her to his house and then proceeds to drug and torture him because she suspects him of being a pedophile that was also involved in the disappearance of another teenage girl. And so, very, very uplifting, comedic, it was heavy. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I was watching this with my nieces and nephews. They loved it. They absolutely loved it. No, I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, right?
Riveting stuff,
Great Uncle James.
I think especially watching this movie a few times to really, make sure I wasn't missing things and to be prepared for this that was a lot. I think, the whole movie was kind of disturbing. And I would say that both main characters really need a lot of time in therapy. I think that was a big takeaway for me. If they were real people, I hope that was a takeaway for them, that y'all need therapy.
Or as they say in Bad Boys 2, you motherfuckers need Jesus.
Yes. Yes. But I would say, I think that the acting from both Paige and her co-star Patrick Wilson was really on point. They really, I think, played their characters very well, and as hard as that was to watch. I also think, too, something I noticed about this film that really stuck out to me was that, they managed to, and there's one scene in particular, but they managed to imply a particularly graphic scene without actually showing anything. There wasn't any nudity. There wasn't any actual graphic imagery.
Yeah.
But the sound effects were so gruesome and so compelling. And I watched with my boyfriend, and he was physically uncomfortable watching this movie the whole time.
He's like, this podcast is making you watch this shit? What are you doing with your time?
He crossed his legs during the aforementioned scene, I'm sure.
He sure did. This movie, it got a 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 78% audience score. I read this review from Roger Ebert. He wrote on his blog. He called it Lolita with a scalpel. And I just thought that was an interesting description of this film.
Oh, man.
I think Paige has got some levity in some other films that we're going to talk about, but this one was definitely on the darker side.
Oh, no question.
In so many ways.
It's quite the departure from her earlier work, which is not anything like this. So the fact they took a chance on him at the time to do this it's pretty impressive.
I would say when I was watching this at first, you were like, okay, they're very much playing off of Elliot's ability to seem wise beyond his years, right? It's a child, but it's a mature, intelligent child. And then you see them in this situation where you're like, oh, but that's absolutely a sexual predator that is trying to take advantage of him. And then they just sit the rest of the movie in this in-between area where you hate Patrick Wilson's character, but you also sympathize for
At times. It's gross.
Yeah, for what he's going through. And you're sitting there and you have to admit to the fact that you're watching a pedophile, a child rapist. And then you're like, yeah, but I kind of hope he pulls this off because he's in a bad spot. And then you're like, well, but no. And I felt like this was one of those movies where it's asking a lot of an actor like Elliot Page to play this character. And when you're 20, I think, when this role came out, I thought it was tremendous performance. It's just a movie that you're like, I don't want to watch that ever again because it doesn't give the audience a second to breathe. The whole time you're uncomfortable.
Elliot Page was actually 17 at the time of filming.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, which was just mind-blowing to me that he was that young and portraying a 14-year-old, but so not that far away from.
Yeah.
For the movie you guys are describing, that is a shockingly high score for both of those.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times, for the movies you're talking about, the way you're describing it, most of the time, that is not very popular with fans. It's usually a critic.
Mm-hmm.
That's a critic gap movie, normally.
It's 100% the actor's performance because this is before Patrick Wilson was like the go-to horror actor. And he's great in this role. And the same is with Elliot Page. So I think it has to do with the two leads who are carrying this whole disturbing film are doing a great job making it a disturbing film.
Wow, intriguing.
78% says it's a crowd pleaser. That's what I gathered.
Lauren, where do you fall on that?
I don't ever want to watch that movie again.
I agree. Fully agree.
But I do think the acting was great. I think taking the content out of it, I think they played the characters extraordinarily well.
I agree with Lauren in that Patrick Wilson and Elliot Page are both fantastic in this.
Lauren, do you feel like you're a better person for having watched and reviewed this?
I think this is one of those movies that you can watch and you feel better about your own sanity. Like I definitely was like, oh, I'm doing okay.
I'm doing better than I thought. Yeah.
All right. So Hard Candy 2005, coming out of the gate, first feature, lead role, killed it in a movie that's hard to watch a second time for sure. Over the next couple of years, the big one to note is 2006. He played Kitty Pryde in X-Men The Last Stand, a movie where I read that he was actually outed by Brett Ratner as being gay during the filming of the movie, which sucks.
And Paquin confirmed it too. Brett Ratner's a fucking douche.
Yeah, that's not surprising. That guy's an asshole.
Like a 19 years old outing an young actor like that is a real shitbag move.
And like he never denied the claims because he was too busy denying the fucking rape claims he had against him. So like he's got so many other issues he's dealing with that he's like, I'm not even going to get around to being a douchebag in this regard.
He's like, what do I rather be known as, an asshole or a rapist? I'll take asshole.
Yeah,
So
I gotta
that.
pick and choose my battles when I'm a giant piece of shit.
What do you guys think of Kitty Pryde and this X-Men movie, and I guess the other one that came 7 years later?
So this one kind of sucked, but Kitty Pryde did get to have one of the first viral moments I saw put into pop culture is when Kitty Pryde is running from the Juggernaut, and there was a famous YouTube video at the moment where someone dubbed over the X-Men cartoons, specifically the Juggernaut, and he said, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch," in like a 1970s pimp voice. And then they actually put that line for Vinnie Jones in this movie when Kitty Pryde, who can like run through walls, was running from the Juggernaut, who one of his powers is once he gets running, he can't be stopped. So he can also run through walls, but it actually goes through them. And he says like something along the lines like, "You can't run from me. I'm the Juggernaut, bitch." And they're like, oh, they did the viral video thing in the movie. But this one kind of stunk. The other one actually was really good. Days of Future Past, that one was really good. Yep. And I enjoyed that one a lot.
Which I read that he was very surprised that he got asked back for Days of Future Past because it was 8 years after the first one, but was very excited about taking on the role at the time. So doing some superhero work, played a pretty major role in that, not Wolverine level major, but supporting character in that superhero universe.
Mm-hmm.
It is blowing my mind that he is doing all of these incredibly good and massive projects, and he's a teenager.
Yeah.
18 at the time.
Blowing my mind. That's crazy talk.
Yeah, I think we sometimes take for granted when you see child actors, teenagers, like doing incredible work, and you're like, oh, that's normal. It's not at all. Right? Like just to balance everything at that age is crazy. So 2007, largest audience gap is An American Crime, and James is going to talk about it.
The audience gave this a score of 74, and the critics gave it a score of 38. So the audience loved it, and the critics hated it. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know how the audience loved this. This movie is somehow less watchable than Hard Candy when it comes to what you experience on screen. So it is based on a true story too. The film recounts one of like the most shocking crimes I've ever heard of.
In our backyard, James.
Yeah, right here. It took place in Indianapolis, Indiana. where in 1965, a teenage girl was locked in the basement and tortured for months by a neighborhood family. If that sounds like a movie you enjoy, you should probably call the police. But that's exactly what you're getting here. They did not dress this movie up at all. It is very much a straightforward reenactment of that story. So, young girl Sylvia Likens is played by Elliot Page, one of two daughters of traveling kind of carnival workers who are on extended stay and they need the money. So they leave their daughters with like a neighborhood friend. And the neighborhood friend is patron of Indianapolis home, single mother, Gertrude Benuski, I believe. She's played by Catherine Keener, and she has 6 children, and was originally going to be released in theaters, but due to production issues, it was sold to Showtime and became a TV movie. It's got a really good cast. It's Catherine Keener, who's great, Elliot Page, who's great in it. James Franco plays an abusive boyfriend, which is probably something that was fairly easy for him to play. Bradley Whitford plays a district attorney who prosecutes the family. And let me tell you, it is a hard watch because it goes out of its way to put the torture this family goes through and like the complete the torture this family puts this young girl through and like the complete senselessness of it and the amount of people who could have done something to intervene but didn't, like, right on display, and doesn't really put any more of a story around it. It is just a torture movie from start to finish. Senseless violence, and it's a true story, so you're just sitting there just like, ugh. Keener and Page are great in their roles. Page is definitely vulnerable and helpless, and his character throughout the movie portrays that really well. Keener is also portraying like a complete psychopath who still somehow believes like she's upholding like traditional Christian values by torturing Page's character. Despite the story and the captivating performances, though, this movie doesn't go out of its way to explore like why anything is taking place. So it's just a straightforward torture film, which I can't justify watching ever again. An important story that was told straightforward when it needed to be told kind of more palatable way and explored a little more for the viewer. But instead, it's like, you just want 2 hours of watching a teenager get killed? Here you go. I'm like, ugh, I don't want this anymore. I don't know how the audience liked it. I think they liked it because the story is one that needs to be told, and about, children being abused and how they can't really reach out for help. But I don't think people actually liked this movie. I think they just liked the story and what has happened and changing laws since then. But I can't see someone justifying enjoying this movie.
It is brutal. It's tough to watch, I think, in particular, because Elliot Page is so convincing as this helpless, very much abused human who gets branded, and it's rough. It's just interesting to watch because it's right here in the backyard of Indianapolis. So that part at least perked me up a little bit. But we're on a trend so far of tortured characters, either doing the torture or being tortured. It just seems to be a theme.
Like, I looked up the address because that's like right in the city that we live in, and that house was still up, and it was unoccupied and still up until about 2009 when it finally got demolished, and now it's a church parking lot. But everyone involved in this story, like the kids tortured her, she tortured them, like neighborhood kids around tortured her. Like 6 people ended up going to jail. 5 of them were children. One of them was Keener, who got life in prison, but was like Keener's character who got life in prison. Like, it's just a story of the worst people on earth, and watching it on film, you're like, oh my God, is this still going? You're like, there's an hour left of this. What more could possibly happen? And it just keeps keeping on.
I don't know if we've ever started an episode with reviews where I can sense the utter despair in the 2 reviewers as they tell their stories.
That's why, like, I saved this one to watch it last because I was doing the review, because there's so many other movies I love, like Juno and Inception. I was like, oh, these movies are great. And then I was like, I looked at what I'm reviewing. I was like, oh my God, I got to be in a safe space when I watch that.
So far, the only projects I want to watch of Elliot Page are Trailer Park Boys.
That's a good answer. You're right.
That's it so far.
Who knows? We haven't seen I Downloaded a Ghost, so you don't really know yet.
Fair point.
No, don't close the door on that one yet. A lot of reviews early in the career here, but the one movie we'll mention before we get to highest critic score, so we're gonna add some joy and jubilee into this, is 2007's The Tracy Fragments, which Case talked about as a huge bomberoo. Highest critic is Juno, one that we mentioned and talked a little bit about on the Allison Janney episode, but definitely didn't give it its due. So Rigby struck gold on this episode, and he's going to get a chance to talk about this.
Yeah, I got lucky. So the first two movies we reviewed sound pretty horrific, but this one is a real treat. So Juno is a 2007 comedy film starring Elliot Page, along with an all-star cast like J.K. Simmons, Allison Janney, previously covered on Munson's at the Movies, Michael Cera, Jason Bateman, and Jennifer Garner. It's a wonderful movie about a teenage girl named Juno, played by Elliot Page, obviously before Elliot Page transitioned. Juno is in the process of looking to experiment with sex with her best friend, Paulie, played by Michael Cera. And in that, Juno happens to get pregnant. After revealing to her family that she is pregnant, she visits an abortion clinic, but Juno decides that she wants to have the baby. And in that decision comes the main plot of the movie. The viewer is left wondering whether Juno will keep the baby and raise it herself, or will Juno give up the baby for adoption? And in that, we meet many of the movie's great supporting characters, like Jennifer Garner and Jason Bateman, who are a quirky couple who are looking to adopt a baby. It's an absolutely wonderful movie. Paige is extremely funny, yet also very touching as Juno. Juno's parents, played by J.K. Simmons and Janney, are pure comedy gold. They're those two are my favorite part of the movie. Just their wackiness, basically, and just how they interact with Juno, I think, is absolutely fantastic. The movie's written by Diablo Cody, who has a great story. She was a stripper before she became a screenwriter, and she's also a graduate of the University of Iowa, so she's got a close place in my heart. She's also gone on to do other works in Hollywood since Juno. In my eyes, this is the most memorable role of Page's career thus far, and I think it really showed off his range, coming from a dark and disturbing movie like Hard Candy to a tender, funny movie like this. I really can't recommend it enough. It's one of my favorite movies of the 2000s, and after having recently rewatched it, it's still funny to this day. I just remember that year there was some really good movies. Michael Clayton, There Will Be Blood, No Country for Old Men, and in all of those movies, Juno was my favorite of all of them. So I think that's really saying something, and it's got, like I said, it's got great staying power. It's still awesome to this day, and super, super creative movie. And yeah, I really loved it, and I loved Elliot's performance in this. This has a 94 on Rotten Tomatoes, so it just shows how much the critics loved it. Roger Ebert, who has always been my favorite critic, he said this was his favorite film of 2007, and rightfully so, in my opinion.
It was the first time I'd ever seen it, and I found myself audibly laughing like 4 or 5 different times, and that's not something I normally do. And I just loved Elliot's portrayal. My friend who's a psychologist would say Juno's character has a very buoyant personality, and by buoyant meaning like doesn't dwell on the negatives of the situation, very positive, and is like aggressively positive to the point where like I don't know how one person could be like that, but like the performance is so consistent that you buy it. It makes sense in that universe. So
you look at the other movies we've looked at up until this point, and there have been some good actors in those movies, but this movie has a lot of good actors. And he is just, again, we say this with a lot of actors that we rate real highly. He is going toe-to-toe and delivering just as good of a performance as anybody else in this movie. It's really impressive.
Yep.
Was the 4th youngest actress ever nominated for an Academy Award for Best Leading Actress.
Yep.
Yeah. 4th youngest ever. 20 years old getting an Academy Award nomination.
Absolute wild, but I think an indicator of the talent we're looking at still to this day. So
yes.
We just went back to back kind of with reviews. We've got a little bit of time before the next one. So between 08 and 2014, Ellie gets very busy. So 08 is in Smart People as a character named Vanessa, alongside folks like Dennis Quaid. But 2009, he's in Whip It, a movie that I think James mentioned earlier, a movie about women's roller derby. And he plays Bliss / Babe Ruthless, which is a great roller derby name. Mm-hmm. And it's directed by Drew Barrymore, which is pretty interesting. Marcia Gay Harden plays the character's mom, and Marcia Gay is great in it. I enjoyed Whip It. It's available on Hulu.
What a cool topic for a movie. I love movies with original topics and plots, and this certainly fits that.
Yeah, I had actually somehow never seen Whip It before. I watched it a couple of weeks ago. I really liked it. I have a couple of friends that actually do roller derby, so it was
hell yeah.
And I've never watched them do roller derby, and I was kind of I was like, oh, this is really cool. I kind of want to go watch them compete.
Yeah, the ensemble makes roller derby seem pretty fun to go watch.
Yeah.
Lauren, did you reach out to any friends?
I didn't. I should though. What I was going to say is I really enjoyed her dad. I loved at the end when he puts that sign out in the yard. He's so excited to finally have a kid that he can put a yard sign out.
Who's played by Daniel Stern.
Their athletic prowess, and I was like, yes, I love this.
Cool little concept. Definitely something to check out if you're a fan of Elliot Page. But '09 is kind of the first example of a few where Elliot does kind of features his activism work on screen. And so in this case, he narrated the Vanishing of the Bees documentary, which was all about, at the time, trying to figure out why were all the honeybees disappearing across the world, and how was that affecting global markets and the health of the environment and things like that. So only about an hour long, pretty fascinating, but I think the first documented example of a few that we're going to see where you see a very activist lifestyle, especially in the work that he does. '09 makes the appearance on The Simpsons, like many other actors that we've covered up to this point. And then in 2010, probably the biggest movie that he's been in his career is in Christopher Nolan's Inception as Ariadne. A crossover with JGL.
Yep.
So we haven't talked about this since episode 1.
No.
Who else is in it?
Ken Watanabe.
Watanabe.
Oh, okay. Watanabe's in it.
He dies in it.
Well, that's a given.
Oh, no.
It's one of the 70% of the movies he dies in.
That's true.
Not only is Inception awesome, and obviously it's helmed by Christopher Nolan, who's one of the premier directors in Hollywood with an awesome cast, but this is Elliot's first foray into like action thrillers too. So really showing off that range, and the chemistry between Elliot and DiCaprio in this film is fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a great cast on their part.
Another example of really belonging on the screen with other big actors. It's really impressive that he was able to pull this off.
I love Inception. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It blew my mind the first time I saw it. And I think the most shocking and impressive visual scene in the movie is Leonardo DiCaprio and Elliot Page in like the first half hour of the movie when they're at the cafe and Leonardo DiCaprio is trying to coach Elliot through how to create these dream worlds. And then he goes like, how do you think we got here? And he can't remember. It's like, and then everything explodes. I was absolutely blown away. I watched it again and it gave me chills. I was like, damn, this scene rocks so hard.
Yeah.
The thing I read about this particular press junket was it was not great on Elliot's psyche, because at this time, Elliot was really struggling with gender identity. And during the junket, because it's a Chris Nolan film and it was so big, Elliot was having to go out every night and wear like a new dress and look very girly, and was really struggling with that. And the fact that Elliot was being forced into that almost nightly, really, really struggled with it. Yeah. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I'm sure the paycheck was nice for that movie and really put Elliot on the map, but from a mental health standpoint, I don't think it was very healthy.
Yeah, he's gone out of his way to say that like the clothing was something he had struggled with since he was a child, where it's like the haircuts were uncomfortable, but once he was able to cut his hair short, he felt a lot more comfortable. But the clothing was something that he could never move past because of kind of the gender norms that are expected. And when you have to do a red carpet event every night where it's not only just like feminine clothes, but it is the most feminine clothes, it was, I read the same thing, Kyle. Really, really waned on him.
Yep. Couple roles just to mention over the next couple of years. Was in Super as Libby/Bolty in 2010, made an appearance on Family Guy in 2012, so doing some of the biggest cartoons at the time, just little one-offs. And then does a Woody Allen movie in To Rome with Love, plays Monica, a struggling actress. And I hate to admit it, because James will throw me under the proverbial bus on this, even though it's corny as hell at times, and it's very Woody Allen, I actually didn't mind this movie. Comparatively to some others that we watched that I hate, but I really like Midnight in Paris. I hate that I really like it, but I love it. And To Rome with Love had its very endearing moments, like having the Italian husband doing opera.
No, I mean, you know what you did.
Kyle, I'm with you. It's not my favorite Woody Allen, but it's an enjoyable movie. So I don't think there's any shame in saying that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's shame in praising Woody Allen, which none of us are doing right now. But the movie itself is enjoyable.
Does selecting to be in this movie kind of surprise anybody for Elliot?
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When asked about it and interviewed later, he mentioned like, yeah, I was intimidated. You see the cast and, you hear so many things about, growing up and going through art school. Like, oh, Woody Allen has such a big name. Alec Baldwin,
Jesse
Greta
Eisenberg.
Gerwig. Yeah, exactly.
Greta Gerwig.
Roberto Benigni, who I believe won an Academy Award.
He was delightful in the movie. He was absolutely delightful.
But when interviewed, it's like, yeah, kind of regret it.
Okay.
It was intimidating. Didn't know really what I was getting myself into. And, if I could take it back, I would.
Interesting.
I would say of all the actors that Elliot works with that we've covered, Allison Janney is definitely the most prolific of the group because I think there's at least 3 movies, could be 4, that he works with Allison on, including Touchy Feely in 2013. Played a character named Jenny. Made his video game debut in Beyond Two Souls in 2013, so joining the likes of the Danny Trejos and Keith Davids of the world, doing some video game stuff. X-Men Days of Future Past, which we mentioned earlier, eight years after the original, reappeared as Kitty Pryde, a movie that this
is the good one.
Is good, and Case was like, I can't believe the scores on this movie. Like, it's really highly rated.
Yeah, this one's 90 and 91 critic and audio compared to the other one, which is 57 and 61. That's pretty wild for a sequel, right? It's usually flipped.
There's been like 12 X-Men movies, and 3 of them are good, and the rest of them are like either pure trash, they're just like kind of shitty, and this is one of the 3 good ones.
Not only does Elliot do SNL, but also big career moment, big personal moment, came out as gay in 2014.
Yeah.
Publicly in a speech at an event.
What was the event? But to do it in that manner.
It was an LGBTQ like celebration event. It was like an advocacy event, and Elliot was like, because I'm gay myself, and everybody's like, oh shit.
Yeah, and after fucking asshole Brett Ratner went out of his way to out Elliot years in advance, to do it on your own terms and to do it in an event like that has to be really rewarding, and it's really commendable to do it on such a large stage.
Yeah.
Surrounded by people who are going to support you.
Absolutely.
Doing that decision. So that's definitely a calculated move.
And he's gotten to the biggest part of his career at this point and risking a lot, but at the same time being able to carry a lot of influence is really commendable. This is an important milestone for her career because you're going to see a shift as we continue down this path of the types of roles that Elliot chooses to take on. And there's a consistent theme, a little bit closer to who he really is. And I think you see a shift in the types of projects that he takes on at that moment in time. A little bit of a pivot here that we're going to see. But largest critic gap is 2015, and that movie is Into the Forest. And since Warren's not here, I'm going to jump in and tackle that one. Into the Forest is largest critic gap. The split is 76-43, so 76 critics, 43. So pretty much the exact opposite, almost to the point for American Crime for audience gaps. So just kind of flip the numbers, and that's where we're at. And so it's an indie film. Those indie films like this are almost chock full, like ready for critic gap type of situations. It's also an A24 film, which for critics perks their interest right away because A24 has a very particular brand when it comes to projects like this. Brought up A4 a couple different times on this podcast. What is their brand, or what is the thing that attracts critics to their movies?
I think definitely like original stories.
Yeah.
They nail just like ridiculously original scripts with like quirky characters.
Artsy types of stories too.
It's like ranges from like, did they do The Lighthouse? They did, right?
Yep. They're not afraid to challenge the form.
Right.
Okay.
To like Hereditary, just like shit like that. Like every single just like banger original movie that's come out over the last 5 years, like it's possible that A24 is behind it.
He's probably a pretty good fit with this production company.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love A24.
They're not afraid to put money behind a small project with like relative unknown writers, relative unknown directors, just to fund it to get like good actors in there and good production value. And so sometimes there's flops and then sometimes they strike gold.
I learned before even getting into plot that the entire reason this movie was made is because Elliot found this book on a bookshelf in Halifax, where he's from, and was convinced to buy it by the woman who worked there, and read through it, fell in love with it, and became one of the producers on the film. Elliot's the main reason this movie exists, which is pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Synopsis is, after a massive power outage, two sisters learn to survive on their own in their isolated woodland home. The sisters are played by Elliot Page and Evan Rachel Wood. The synopsis fails to mention that they are two of the most selfish people ever to land in a survival situation, which frustrates the living shit out of you, which completely explains the critic gap here and why audiences didn't love it as much as critics, because they make just absolutely bonkers decisions early on in the movie that you just can't help but shake your head at. It really holds back high ratings on this movie.
Well, because everybody's so well versed in apocalyptic conditions, so everybody knows how they would handle it, right?
We're all armchair quarterbacks when it comes to zombie apocalypses.
Well, this last year I bought a lot of toilet paper, and
so this is the main frustration. At the start, Elliot's character is kind of the one that you hate because he really wants to go, like, power's out. The movie doesn't tell you why. All you know is that people are starting to get frenetic. People are starting to get desperate. Gas is really hard to find. So it's getting to the point where, like, we got to hunker down and conserve. And Elliot's like, I just want to go in and hang out with the cute boy I'm hanging out with. Dad, drive me to town, even though we really don't have gas because I accidentally left the battery on in the car, blah, blah, blah. And so we can't even jump the car. So it's very selfish at the start of the movie. Eventually, then it becomes Evan Rachel Wood's character, who is a dancer, and it just constantly complains because they don't have power. So she has to dance to a metronome, and that's driving her nuts. And that goes on for like 30 to 45 minutes. And you're just like, get with the picture. There's like, people are desperate. You don't need music right now. So that drives you crazy over time. But I will say, Elliot is acting his ass off in this movie. Even though he starts as insufferable, by the end, it becomes the responsible one. And there is a scene where his character actually guts a pig, a real pig. Elliot takes a big bite out of the role. There's a lot of emotions dealing with grief. It's a very emotional role. Evan Rachel Wood is also phenomenal in the second half. Her character, there's a really tough scene to watch where she gets raped by this local guy, and they shift the perspective. It's like vertical. And knowing her history of abuse at the hands of Marilyn Manson and watching her act in that scene, it's incredibly powerful. One of the most intense scenes I've ever seen. And just kind of knowing her background, it makes sense why she was able to kind of channel some of that. So that was pretty gnarly to watch. But which movie was it earlier where we mentioned the whole, like, was it Hard Candy? She was 17 playing a 14-year-old, right?
yeah.
In this movie, Evan and Elliot play like 17, 18-year-olds, and they're both 28 and 29 in real life. And they're like talking about the SAT and stuff like that. And that's kind of non-believable. That's a little bit of a limitation for it. So I think IMDb has it right here. They have it. The audience has it at 5.8. The critics have it at 59. It's almost identical. I would put it in like the 50 to 55 range. I don't think it's anywhere near 70, and I don't think it's anywhere near 30. But that's my take on Into the Forest. It's an interesting film.
Was it going for kind of a Quiet Place vibe with not explaining the apocalyptic cause?
Yeah, Max Minghella plays a supporting character, and his whole character is like talking about, we've heard rumors that they're getting power back on the East Coast in Boston, so they were going to leave at one point and go hiking, like however long it would take them to get, like 8 months to hike to Boston or something ridiculous like that. But it's built as a like sister connecting with each other film, and it's okay at that.
Okay.
It's just there's a lot going on, and the characters drive you absolutely bonkers, and there's just some unnecessary plot points. But the one thing to note here is Elliot has his first nude scene in a film too in this movie with Max Minghella.
I'm impressed that this kicks off a pretty good run of producer credits for him.
Yeah, those producer credits are Into the Forest, Freeheld, My Days of Mercy, The Cured, and There's Something in the Water. So the next couple of years, he's in Freeheld, plays Stacy alongside Julianne Moore, a movie about a lesbian police detective in New Jersey who ends up getting cancer and has a huge fight. True story about having a fight on her hands to make sure her partner domestic partner gets her pension because at the time marriage was not legal. Gay marriage wasn't legal. And so, again, to the theme of coming out, starting to pick some roles that are very LGBTQ focused. It's a decent movie. It's okay. Julianne Moore is phenomenal. I mean, she's a phenomenal actress.
As always.
Good supporting. True story. It's probably in like the 60 range. It's not a great movie, but I think it does a decent job of telling the story. Michael Shannon's in it, and he's pretty much good in everything he does.
Yeah.
Next year, Tallulah. Elliot plays Tallulah, a young woman who is babysitting for a terrible mother who decides to basically take the woman's child away from her because this woman is such a hazard. And Allison Janney plays a character who's trying to deal with the ethical dilemma at play there. Pretty decent film. It's available on Netflix as well.
This is back-to-back episodes where we have actors playing a lot of title roles.
Yeah, it's probably like the third or fourth by now. And then finally, a voice role in My Life as a Zucchini, plays Rosie, and that was an Oscar-nominated foreign film that year. So that's a cool, if you're going to do some voice work, at least do it in something that's Oscar-nominated. So that's pretty fun. And we run into now our final feature review, and that is Flatliners 2017, and Case is going to talk about it.
This is the lowest critic rank, and when I'm looking at my spreadsheet of 25 movies, the 4% is the lowest critic or fan ranking of anything that I have on my sheet. Spoiler alert, it deserved it. It really did.
Damn, that bad? 4 is like all-time bad.
Well, and there's an interesting story behind here, and I'll get into it in a second here. It does have a 32% for fan ranking, and I think that is a nostalgia ranking based on the original movie. The movie was budgeted for $19 million, and it did gross $26 million, so it was a surprising profit. However, it's not that surprising when you hear how the movie was released. In reading several articles in preparation for this episode, it was clear that the studio had given up on this movie, and they knew that it was not good. So what they did was they released this movie cold. No screenings, and they didn't even allow a Thursday night showing. They basically wanted audiences to go into the weekend watching this movie and not give them a chance to really like nosedive it before more audiences could watch it. In a very odd strategy, I've actually watched this movie 3 times in the last 18 months. I caught it on Stars about a year ago.
You're in your own form of torture.
You like to hurt yourself, do you, huh?
During the peak of COVID stay-at-home time, I saw this on Stars, and I turned it on, and then the movie was over, and I realized that I hadn't paid attention at all. So then I thought to myself, well, I must just not have been in the mood for a movie or this movie, because it can't possibly be that bad. So naively, I watched it again on another occasion not too long after that, and what I realized was that my defense mechanism of disinterest had been protecting me the entire time from this movie. And then I finally watched it again in preparation for this episode. About the plot, Flatliners is a 2017 sci-fi horror remake of the popular 1990s movie by the same name. There's a reason why this movie did successful because of the 90s movie, and I'll get into that here in a second. Both versions follow 5 med school students who begin to do experiments involving inducing death, staying dead for a short period of time, and then being brought back to life. Pretty much the same angles. They're pretty similar movies. The only difference on this one is that when this cast is brought back from the dead, they're kind of like super wired, or they have some superpowers. And so, you know, like Elliot Page is able to all of a sudden play piano and remember a bunch of stuff that nobody else can really explain. And then as each of them kind of go into their flatlining experience, they come out with this superpower, but then they also come out with this haunting, which is similar to the first one. Page plays a really important role at the plot of this movie. He plays Courtney, who is the one that actually begins the experimenting. Courtney tells the others that what he needs is their help to run the experiment because he wants to more or less study the afterlife and try to get some scientific basis for life after death. And he basically needs a medical team to induce death, monitor his brain waves and vitals, and then, while Courtney's dead, run a process to revive him. At one point, Courtney is basically being stalked by his haunting or the spirit after him. He tells the rest of the team in a video that, hey, I did this because I wanted to be in touch with my sister who died when I was young. Overall, you know, including Page, the performances were really flat. I think the cast was good, and it had really good potential, but it just fell flat. And here's a great example of why this cast ended up being really flat. It was announced that Kiefer Sutherland would actually be reprising his role from the first movie, and that this version would actually be a sequel rather than a remake. However, if you've watched this movie, you will see that Kiefer Sutherland plays an entirely different role, and there isn't one mention to any of the original Flatliners.
A very brief appearance early in the movie.
Just needed that name, baby.
Yes, it was crazy. Did anybody else see this?
No, I mean, when you said it was the worst movie you've ever seen, I could fall back on my no reason for me to watch that. And then I checked, it's got the exact same score as the worst movie I've ever seen, which is Cool World. Also a 4%.
Lauren, did you subject yourself to this torture?
I did not.
Yeah, you're wiser for it. Case, I think I watched like 2/3 and then I might have flatlined.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember the rest.
Just flat, right? I mean, I'm not even making a joke on flatlining. It's just there was no
You're not trying to be
punny.
punny. You're not trying to be punny.
I will finish with two positive things, because I'm that kind of a guy, right? Like I'm a positive person. Number one, it gave me a reason to watch the original version, which I found just as enjoyable nearly 3 decades later. And in researching this movie, I learned that there is a popular pre-hardcore punk band in Canada named the Flatliners, and their most popular song is called Freddy's Got Slacks.
Thanks, Case. Well, that's our last feature review. Now we're just going to kind of round out the last 4 years here of the most recent projects. Starting with My Days of Mercy. Elliot plays a character named Lucy, a role alongside Kate Mara, and another LGBTQ story. So again, picking up the theme here. The Cured in 2017, a project that Elliot helped produce, played Abby. Very dramatic role. It's a movie about, it's almost like a zombie movie where folks have this sickness and it's all about, it's like an othering story. I think that's probably why he produced it, because it's all about how we treat people that don't have the help that they need or are different than us.
A lot of the critics and journalists really raved about his involvement here.
Yeah, he's very, very good in the dramatic moments and sequences. Again, careful selection of projects. But personal note here, Elliot married Emma Porter in 2018, so 4 years after coming out. Everything seemed to be hunky-dory and pretty good. We'll get to an update on that here in a couple of years. So then, a year later, Elliot is in Tales of the City, a show that's available on Netflix. Plays Shauna, another LGBTQ role. Plays one of the main characters alongside Laura Linney. And the whole concept is the character was adopted and kind of doesn't have a relationship with her stepmother, doesn't really know it's her stepmother, and Laura Linney comes back, and the community that she's living in is very LGBT friendly, lots of trans characters, and it's very much a fish out of water experience for Laura's husband. And again, that theme is just consistent in terms of the roles that Elliot is taking through this time. And then to cross over with our boy Chris Pratt, a little bit of controversy for Elliot in 2019. He's the one that called out Chris Pratt for his anti-LGBTQ church that Chris Pratt had to go on a little bit of like a public apology tour for, a public explanation tour is maybe a better way to say it.
Oh no, being held accountable for my actions. It's terrible.
White men being held accountable. Weird.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm reaping what I sow.
Elliot was the one that kind of started that controversy, and so some more activism work on his part there.
I appreciate it. Always been someone who says things very proudly and has no problem being confrontational. I mean, I think there's like a viral video of when Ted Cruz was running for Texas senator, of Elliot Page showing up to like one of those promotional cookouts that politicians do, and it's Ted Cruz like just grilling burgers or something, and Elliot Page just sneaks up to the front there and just immediately starts grilling him on his like anti-LGBT marriage like laws that he's trying to propose. And Ted Cruz just like fumbling like, oh, what's going on? And it's like, damn, he's 5'1", he's not a big guy. And so to be that confrontational, that takes a lot of heart and a lot like fearlessness.
And he's a vegan, so he had a little extra fire in him.
That part didn't come up when they were talking about like marriage laws and whatnot, but I bet if they had time, they'd work their way down to that.
But more activism work. Elliot narrates and directs There's Something in the Water, a 2019 documentary about the environmental discrimination in Nova Scotia for communities of color. solid little documentary. They try to give both sides as much as they can.
Is this his first directorial?
I think so.
Really interesting. That sounds intriguing.
Definitely a passion project. And then I guess most recently, the most recent project that he's done is The Umbrella Academy. He plays Vanya, a superhero show where his character doesn't really have any superpowers. Plays some violin, but not really. It's more of a learn how to look like play violin, but doesn't actually do it.
Yeah.
So the only main character of the 5 who doesn't actually have any superpowers.
Yeah, what I read was that was one of the kind of intriguing parts of the role was this character who's, all its relatives, all the characters' relatives have superpowers, and he's just like a normal person, and how the dynamic of how kind of torturing that is. And I think it's like on its 3rd season, and it's doing really well. I haven't watched it, but you don't get that many seasons on Netflix if you're just an average show. They usually only do that to the one that everyone's watching. And
then kind of just to route it out, some life things. So the big one, 2020, came out as trans. And, that sparked a lot of controversy when that happened. I know there's like Ben Shapiro videos, right? Like, Elliot Page comes out as a man, blah, blah, blah.
First, to come out as gay about 6 years prior, and the backlash that you face from that, and then to fully embrace, who you are and come out as trans, where now all of a sudden you as a person are becoming kind of like a political talking point. And, you have to, it's not just, hey, this was, I did this for, I think Elliot even mentioned, he's like, I did this for selfish reasons. I wanted to finally be me, and I didn't want this to be a political thing, but now I have Rand Paul talking about me on the Senate floor. Like, this is just trying to be my normal self. And now I'm all over the news, and it's got to be a lot. It's got to weigh on someone. And for that to happen, and then COVID to happen, where there's not a lot of filming of new roles going on, and there's not a lot of other things to talk about, that news cycle just kind of ate them up, and it became the thing to talk about.
And also just like from just like a high profile perspective, like, he is definitely, I guess you could make the case for Caitlyn Jenner, even though I completely disagree. Probably the most high profile person to ever transition, I would imagine, in Hollywood right now. So it takes guts, and it takes a lot of, inner strength to be able to do that. So more power to him for being able to do that.
And that led to Elliot being the first openly trans man on Time magazine in 2021. And then on the other side of things, also got divorced from Emma Portner in 2021 as well. So just a really interesting and tumultuous couple of years. But from what I could tell from the interviews and what I've read, Elliot's feeling more empowered than ever, and clearly enough to start producing some music, putting out some tunes. So
it's upbeat music too.
Yeah. So a little bit of a new dawn, a new day from that standpoint. So
I read an article that he's actually gotten more offers and stuff thrown at him since he did transition. So that's good news, and it's nice to know that people are obviously accepting of that.
Hell yeah.
And it's also shocking because that's just not how Hollywood's been. They want to be that way, but that's just not how they've been.
Practically, they haven't been there. But that brings us to modern day. What we normally do when we get to this point is we get into a little top performances from Rigby and see what he's got for us.
So I have a list from Screen Rant, which we've used before.
Juno has to be number 1.
Yeah, it gotta be.
Juno is number 1. Good job.
It's not Hard Candy. It cannot possibly be.
Well, I hate to tell you, Hard Candy's number 2, baby.
It's a great performance. I get it. Just say best movies.
Tough movie, yeah.
Yeah, this is performances. Remember that. Yeah. So it's not movies.
Yeah.
Inception has to be on there, I assume.
Yeah, Inception is number 4.
Okay.
Ooh, we skipped 3.
We did. I've guessed 2, so I'll let you guys kind of take the rest from here.
You can't count Juno as a guess. That would have been like counting Thor as a guess.
Yeah, you guessed the movie that he was nominated for an Academy Award. That's going out on a limb.
Brave, very brave,
very brave.
What about The Cured?
Nope.
American Crime.
That is number 9. So we're not doing 6 through 10, but yet.
Yeah. So we're missing 3 and 5.
Yep.
Whip It.
Yes, Whip It is on here.
What number?
That's number 5.
So we need 3 still.
We need 3. Yep.
What about Tallulah?
There you go, Lauren. Nice job.
Nailed it.
It's a good movie.
Okay, so 6 is My Days of Mercy. 7 is Super. 8 is Mouth to Mouth. 9 is American Crime. And 10 is Peacock.
How nuts is it that 4 out of his top 10 movies we didn't even talk about? Like, we didn't even scratch the surface on.
I think of the 10, 9 of them we at least mentioned. One of them we didn't.
Yeah, it's an interesting list, Rigby.
It is. It's like a good mix of mainstream, indie, and
Performance-based.
kind of some other stuff in between. No X-Men on that list, though. Surprise.
No Flatliners. I'm surprised by that.
Weird. All right, it's Munson Meter time. The way this works, we rate every actor on a scale of 0 to 100. Based on a variety of factors. They can include anything from longevity, project choice, pop culture impact, their range, any awards that they might have won, right? Like what does that awards footprint look like? Other talents, personal life, comedic chops, box office success or lack thereof, and anything else that matters to us as Munsons. So we will start this time with Rigby.
You mentioned it, Kyle. He has really done a great job of choosing roles throughout his career, ranging from Hard Candy, which the movie itself is up for debate on whether it's good, but I don't think you can watch that and not think that was a powerful performance, to Juno, which is I don't want to say lighthearted, but it's a tender comedy that's still funny to this day. Big budget movies like X-Men and Inception, other movies like Tallulah, which people enjoy. And along the way, he has obviously transitioned, but also has stood out from an activism standpoint. And I think there's a lot to be said with that. So not only does he have great range, but I think he embodies sort of what a person of that stature should do with their Hollywood career. And that is be a good voice for, take on a lot of good roles, be a good voice for a lot of good causes, and just be a good person. So, he gets a lot of points with me for that. Academy Award nominated. But I think the cool thing about Elliot is that he's so young, and with this new part of his life, I think sort of the sky is the limit about what he can do and what he can achieve. So for him to come out, obviously it wasn't easy, but I think now that that has happened, I'm hoping that he is feeling better, from a mental health standpoint, and that can translate into having an even stronger career than before. So all that being said, I'm going to give him a 76.
James.
Rigby, I thought that was a great review. I agree with everything you said there.
Yeah.
Whenever I see a role that Elliot takes, even if it's a bad movie, you go, wow, that was a really impressive performance, though. And for that to be something you say about someone when you see them in roles starting from when they're like 16 on, goes a long way to say about how advanced an actor he is at such a young age. And you see that by getting nominated for Academy Award, one of the 4th youngest ever to do it, multiple Emmy nominations. I love the deadpan sense of humor. I love the fact that it is someone who refuses to kind of play into stereotypes. So a lot of the characters he plays, they were never the ditzy, dumb teenage girl. It was always hyper intelligent. It wasn't just like kind of smart. It was the person who would put the adults in their place. And I always found that very fascinating and really well done. And then to be so outspoken in regards to his political beliefs and his mental health issues and his gender identity is really remarkable. I mean, gender identity is so complicated and like mysterious as it is, but politics insists on kind of like fitting everyone into like cute little boxes, and that's just not realistic. And for an actor to be at the height of their fame, to use that opportunity and to use the kind of privilege that comes with being a super wealthy, white, famous person as an opportunity to speak up and against those things is really remarkable. And so for that, I give a big score, and I can't wait to see where his career goes from here. And I'm going to give him an 81.
Lauren, our guest Munson.
Yeah, I echo a lot of things that have already been said. I think Elliot Page has done a lot of movies that have done really well at the box office. Like, I think you look at things like Inception and Juno, that everybody's heard of those movies, everybody's seen those movies.
Uh-huh.
And certainly in Juno, but also in Inception, Elliot Page in that movie, that role.
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly something to be factored into a score here. I also think for being so young, Elliot Page has done a lot of things, but has done there's a lot of diversity, right? Like there's the Hard Candy, but then there's Whip It. And those are very different roles. And I think that he does both really, really well. And that's pretty rare. Like, I think Chris Pratt's another example of that, is of somebody that, kind of transitioned from drama to action movies, and drama to comedy to action movies, and kind of does all of that well. And you don't necessarily see that from a lot of actors.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that Elliot Page does really, really well. I think especially now that, Elliot is Elliot and is kind of coming into this identity that has always been there, but, is kind of able to freely live and be this person. I think I'm kind of excited to see what happens, because like what is possible now? What is possible now when his mind and his creative liberties are free to just go wild? Because if he's done all of this in his career thus far, I think there's so much potential still there. I think all that said, I am going to give Elliot Page a score. I am also going to say a 76.
I found this to be the most interesting deep dive that I've done yet for the podcast.
Ooh.
We're kind of used to doing the early stuff, doing, the variety of roles. And, when you look at Elliot, the combination of the fact that he is so excellent from the earliest roles like Hard Candy, which impressed the crap out of me, all the way to the project choice from the past 5 or 6 years. The alignment, we talked a lot about with like Holly Hunters, like just sometimes you just got to take a role for the dough, and that impressed James and I. What impresses the crap out of me with Elliot is Elliot very clearly is intentional about the types of projects that he wants to produce, direct, and act in, whether it's a lead or a supporting role. And even if you may not love the outcome or the output, you still have to respect what the work looks like. And like, I try to find little lapses in like genuine acting prowess, and I just couldn't find it. Like, everything I watch, even if it was crappy movies like Pit Pony or Will Be Wonderful, like I didn't really love Marion Bridge, like movies like that I don't think were very good. Elliot still stood out every single time.
Yeah.
And what I found most fascinating is being the first actor we've covered that has transitioned publicly like this, gender-wise. It was so interesting to see the little crumbs along the way of how he struggled with his gender identity throughout his career. And there's even a line in Juno where his character, Juno, says to J.K. Simmons, "I don't really know what kind of girl I am." And I part of me was like, I don't think that's acting at that moment in time. Like, I think that's her, at the time, her speaking truth to power in that role as Juno. And so, like, just seeing how uncomfortable he was throughout his career with things like Inception, I just found to be a really, like, intriguing intellectual exercise. And so I'm excited, based on Rigby's comment earlier, that apparently he's getting like even better offers, and because I'm really excited to see what we see from Elliot in the next 5 years and what types of projects he takes on. So this is consistent across the board. I'm also going to give Elliot a 76. All right, Case, round us out.
I just appreciate we saved the best for last tonight.
As always.
Very exciting.
Not the best looking for last, so don't get it twisted.
If I'm being honest, before this episode, I really knew nothing about Elliot Page. But it was one of those episodes where you're researching, and then, like Lauren said, you just start identifying, oh, I remember him in that. So it was a lot of fun to prepare for this episode. I was really impressed with how well Elliot does in the box office metrics that I look at. With the volumes of movies and the amount of performers we've now covered, to be able to put up such big numbers comparatively is really impressive. And he's done a lot in the industry, right? He's acted, directed. He's now a recording artist with 3 Spotify songs.
That's right.
He's been a cinematographer, and he's produced films. And really, the only thing he hasn't done is tried his hand in writing, which I really hope he gets into, because I think he's had a fascinating life journey, and it would be interesting to see how he portrays that either in a screenplay or some sort of a novel or something like that. I would be interested in reading that. It's fascinating. I agree with most everything that's been said, and I'm going to give Elliot a 77.
So, with all of our scores in, that puts Elliot at a 77.2, which will put Elliot in 16th place in between Chris Rock and Rami Malek.
If he has one or two more either major films or iconic roles, he very easily could end up in our top 10.
Especially at the age. We're talking a very young actor here.
You're right.
I'll fill in for Warren here and kind of give you a heads up on what he has coming up.
Yeah, jump right in.
So what are types of movies you can film during a pandemic? Animated ones. And so their post-production got 3 movies coming out. Naya, Legend of the Golden Dolphin, Robo-Dog, and Ark, the animated series, all of which Elliot is lending his voice to. But when you hear some of these casts, so Naya, Legend of the Golden Dolphin, that's going to be Elliot, Gerard Butler, Kate Winslet, Megan Fox. Pretty good cast there.
I've heard of them.
Yep. Robo-Dog, which I'm assuming is about a dog that's a robot. It'd be Rainn Wilson, Ron Perlman, Steve Zahn, Elliot Page. But then this is the one I wanted to get to, which is Ark, the animated series. I believe this is based off of a video game, but I'm not sure. But this cast is bananas. Gerard Butler, Russell Crowe, Malcolm McDowell, Elliot Page, of course, Alan Tudyk, Carl Urban, Jeffrey Wright, and then the one, the only, Vin Diesel.
Nice.
Yes, sold.
That sounds like a show I will probably have to watch. That's not a movie, that's a TV show, so I am pumped to watch that.
Lauren, were you disappointed he didn't have any future projects with Patrick Wilson?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're going to do Hard Candy 2.
I would love to see the reunion on that.
Legally old enough to consent is the fucking tagline of the movie.
As Kevin Feige reintroduces mutants into the MCU, maybe Kitty Pryde will make a reappearance at some point on the Marvel side.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
All right, 5 actors that we're throwing on the wheel for our next episode, which will be episode 45. And that episode drops on September 23rd. Dan Craig will be joining us for his regularly scheduled appearance. And the 5 actors that the wheel was deciding between are Hugo Weaving, David Spade, Elizabeth Moss, Ving Rhames, and Brittany Snow. Of those 5, what do you like, what do you dislike, and who do we think Dan Craig would choose to join for?
I'm afraid that Dan Craig has chose to join for Hugo Weaving, which I have very little interest in covering, because don't get me wrong, there's a bunch of good movies, but he is not the main draw in any of them.
Yeah, more of a supporting character for sure.
Joe Dirt.
Mr. Anderson's not that cool.
A lot of Lord of the Rings action there.
Ving Rhames, we would get to cover Striptease starring Demi Moore.
Okay.
That's always a great role of his.
Yeah, Ving Rhames would be awesome.
Yeah, it would be. I wouldn't mind doing David Spade just because it would be a lighter episode for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think he would score well.
No.
Get to watch some trashy movies, but also we get to watch Joe Dirt, which is a pod favorite. So
Joe Dirte.
We have not talked about Joe Dirte yet.
Joseph R. Dirte.
Kid Rock is not on the list of actors, so that wasn't one of the ones.
Elizabeth Moss is a great actress.
Yeah.
But it's mostly TV stuff.
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of her TV work, but I think I'd be curious to watch some more of her
films.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be your pick? Because that would be my pick too.
Yes.
I'd love to cover Elizabeth Moss. I think she would be fascinating. Especially she's a Scientologist, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it'd be very funny to have to cover that and tiptoe around that whole deal.
She'd be the first one that we've covered, I think.
Yeah. That'd be it's such a dichotomy.
Was she the lead in An Invisible Man?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay.
She's been incredible in pretty much anything she's been in the past couple of years, man.
Invisible Man was great.
Great movie.
She's an awesome actress. She's just a fucking Scientologist.
Gonna lose some points there. We didn't talk about Brittany Snow. Any thoughts on Brittany Snow? Or is she just kind of like meh?
No interest in Brittany Snow or Hugo Weaving. There's a 3-person strike zone I'm looking forward to here.
Don't want to talk about the Pitch Perfect movies and Hairspray? Basically musicals.
I would love for us to one of us to have to watch John Tucker Must Die, just because that movie it's god awful, and watching it 15 years later, I think we'd want to throw something at the TV while we watch it. So,
Kyle, didn't we cover Hairspray?
We did on the Marsden episode. Yeah, Chip did a full review.
That's right.
Well, we'll see. Dan Craig chose one of those 5. Although he's choosing who to join us for, he doesn't decide, the actor, ultimately. That's the wheel that decides, and we'll let the wheel decide.
The wheel decides. We're the only one who still whispers the wheel decides.
Well, we've reached the end of episode 44, and Lauren, the floor is yours. Hot One style. Cameras over here, cameras over here. Any plugs, any upcoming projects you're working on? We always appreciate you being here, and we want to give you your opportunity to share some wisdom.
No upcoming projects that I'm working on specifically right now. There's a TV series that actually just wrapped here in Pittsburgh that I wish I could have worked on, but I'm excited to see it, so I'm going to plug it. But they made a TV series based on the movie A League of Their Own.
Oh, cool.
Which, of course, is an amazing movie.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah, I wish I'd been able to make it work with my schedule to go and work on that movie, but I couldn't. But I'm excited to see it. And
you talked about your work in Gabriel's Rapture.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be a cinematic or a streaming release?
That'll be a streaming release. Passionflix, when they create their movies, they release them direct to their own streaming platform. So it'll go out on their streaming platform, and it'll release in parts. They'll release because it will likely be a long movie. I think part 1 will likely release before the end of this year.
Cool. Sure. That's very cool. Excited for that. That'll be neat to follow.
Absolutely.
We'll have to take a screenshot and post it for the world to see.
Yeah.
We know her.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Lauren. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a blast.
Great having you back.
This has been fun, as always.
So as always, you can find us on Twitter, Munson's at Movies. You can find us on the IG, Munson's at the Movies. You can email us, munsonsatthemovies@gmail.com. Any final thoughts from Elliot Page?
That's what you get for fucking with the Crimson Bolt, and now your legs are gone!
Munson's out.
All right, let's go. Thank you for the education, gentlemen. We've just received a PhD in stupidity. Doctor, shall we?